it would be really cool to see that these guys could make a real living
Mm.
actually competing
Doing
and
it.
winning. Like when I hear Oscar's training, I'm thinking this guy's putting in 3 hour sessions and he's got a full-time job. He's got a family of four. It's like, and he's doing that. And I think I spoke with AJ and he was even giving props to the WNBF and what they're about to do
Yeah.
right now with the WNBF Galaxy. It's going to be huge, massive for
Mhm.
hopefully for natural bodybuilding as a whole, at least in that, definitely in Asia, right? Like we're
Yeah.
talking about big prize money, $100,000. Is that US,
Yep.
by the way? That's being
US dollars. Yeah.
US dollars. What do you think about the fact that women's prize money is less than men's?
Um, I mean, I've never been asked that question.
So you're the WNBF UK president,
I
right?
am
That's
indeed.
accurate. You had mentioned there's a few topics that we can dive into relative to some of the political conversations that have been had on the show previously with the likes of Eric Helms, now Vicky McCann as of recent. Did you catch that
Yep.
episode, by the way?
Yeah, I did. I listened to all of them actually. I like to hear and engage with as much that's going on in the natural community as possible because I think it's important that we're all understanding sort of the landscape. And I share a lot of common interests with a lot of them, and obviously have some differences of opinion with others as well. But I think what you're doing here is really good for the sport. The more people that are talking about natural bodybuilding as a whole and allowing us more conversations to be had, the more we're getting awareness of the sport, but also the nuances that are in between it as well. So yeah, it's good.
So, what was your take on what was discussed about just as far as the current state of maybe, I don't want to say the WNBF, but just the fact that there are so many organizations. You have the IFBB now, who's maybe having some interest in, well, they have actually, because they have the natural IFBB league. For those who may not know, what's your current role right now? You are the president in the WNBF, but what does that entail? And then we can kind of transition into some of the stuff I just mentioned with the political side of things.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm a natural bodybuilding figure pro and a fit body pro. I worked my way up through the various natural federations in the UK to DFAC pro status in figure, went on to then secure my WNBF fit body pro status within the federation that was offering that status in the UK to then be able to become a WNBF pro and compete in the WNBF circuit. And I think, through the many years, so I've been competing since 2013 all the way right the way through now to having the opportunity to obviously be a promoter of the WNBF UK, which I took on. This will be the fifth year now, which I can't quite believe. But through my own competitive career as an athlete, now in the promoter ranks, there's always been lots of different options and there's always been various federations providing natural bodybuilding shows. What we now see, of course, is the open side of the sport as well, dipping their toe in the water and providing the natural shows, which is great for exposure, great for getting more people to quote unquote find out what natural bodybuilding is. But it also then means that we have a much larger, more saturated pool of shows across all countries, not just UK, but all countries where athletes are now having to make a lot more choices on where they compete and what that looks like. Somebody like myself who started off with no social media, no websites, none of this back in the day, not Instagram, it wasn't as kind of what would I say, media focused. You really found out about your natural shows by going to your local gym or by word of mouth or by, somebody knowing who somebody was that did the show down the road. And you built up a community and you learned what these shows were about and what they stood for. And that's why you competed. Now I think there's a lot of blurred lines as to what natural is really. And I think that it can be confusing for somebody new coming into the sport now to really know kind of, well, what's the difference between the natural bodybuilding shows now, these open shows that are now, providing all the natural strands. So I'm kind of going off in a myriad of topics here because it's a huge topic and there's a lot we can unpack. But my role as a promoter for the WNBF UK and the reason why I took this on in the first place is really to promote healthy, natural, well-run, and at the center of all of this, proper testing so that we know that we're all standing on a level playing field doing what we do and being proud to be a natural athlete. And the WNBF, of course, has that as its backbone and has done for the last, gosh, couple of decades, or longer across the world. So I guess there's lots we can dive into here, but that gives a bit of background.
Yeah, okay, no, great. So you competed, of course. I've seen that, of course, on your Instagram. You mentioned figure, not the bodybuilding though, or did you compete in bodybuilding? I might have missed that.
No, in figure. Yeah,
Figure,
so
okay.
yeah, so the just before bodybuilding, of course. Yeah, in UK, we tend to go for a much more heavily muscular, more conditioned look. And certainly back at that point when I was actively competing towards the DFAC Pro card, that's a very heavily muscled and very lean look, which of course we're still looking for today. It was, yeah, quite rare at the time.
And again, you mentioned, did you just say DFAC? Did I get that? Am I hearing
Yeah,
that right? Okay,
that's
so
right.
you did compete in the DFAC, and that's of course again goes back to the episode I just did with Vicky McCann.
Yeah.
You that was before though you became president of the
Yeah, yes,
WNBF?
yeah. Yeah, so I took
Right.
my DFAC Pro card in 2017 and then I took my WNBF Pro card in 2019.
Oh, so this is an interesting one. Did you have any aspirations to do what you're doing now, but in the DFAC first, or you thought that opportunity didn't really present itself, so that's why you thought WNBF is more suitable? Also, to be fair, they've been around longer. Their history's quite rich, right? They have a rich history, given that they
Yeah.
go back, dating back to the 90s, right? 1990, right? And I'm
Yeah.
unpacking a lot of the history as you are starting to see now with the more recent episode we did with Eddie Hernandez. But yeah, so talk about that a little bit about why
Yeah, okay.
the yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so me as a figure competitor working in well in the UK, there was three federations at the time: NPA, BNBF, UKDFBA, and these were the natural shows available in the natural circuit available to us. And I competed in all three of them. And my aim was to try and become a British champion with all natural federations in the UK,
Mm.
which I'm very proud to say I did manage to do that, which was kind of something that I was very, very proud of. And it gave me opportunity to look at the landscape and say, okay, I'm a figure competitor. Where do I want to go? Where do I want to compete? Where's the elite place I want to try and get to as a competitor? And that for me at the time was DFAC. DFC was the platform I wanted to go because there was no option for us with WNBF at that point. So I had the want to try and achieve DFAC Pro status, and I started trying for that really from its inception 2013 and went all the way through. And I didn't win my DFAC Pro card until 2017. And I competed on and off throughout all of those years. I think I only had 1 year off to challenge because it is so difficult to achieve, a pro card of that status. And when I did achieve that, I went across abroad and I've competed with the DFAC in Miami a couple of times. But there was no opportunity at that point, and my head was certainly not thinking about promoter a point of view at that point. The way that in which the promoter element came up for WNBF was born out of the WNBF actually parting ways with the current federation that was in the UK, which was quite a long drawn out story. And I saw an opportunity. Yeah,
That's the
you got to.
UKDFBA for those listening that we've spoke about before on the show. So just in case someone's wondering, that's the UKDFBA that parted ways with the WNBF and now they are linked with the PNBA. But continue, Steph.
Yeah, sure. So, that came sometime later. That came a few years later, and an opportunity presented itself. And when I took my WNBF Pro card, my desire as a natural athlete was to continue competing. What then transpired was an opportunity came out of this where we were approached to talk about would we consider potentially running a show in the UK. I did not want to see the WNBF lost in the UK. I had been working very hard towards that goal. It became my sole focus, and the WNBF's morals and values for me as an athlete fit. And I've always been an athlete, or I've always been somebody in all areas of life. I vote with my feet where I feel gives the most, I think, probably just, fair, and transparent set of circumstances for me to be able to, in goodwill, put myself through the arduous work that needs to get to where we were. And that was what WNBF was for me and continues to be this day. But the opportunity came along for us to take on the promoter role and interviewed for that process with Bob, Tina, and the guys, and went into a vision, and it just took over. It's been a labour of love and a massive passion project for me to ensure that UK athletes have a pathway to the WNBF, and we didn't want to lose that. So that was when WNBF UK, of course, was born in 2019 and has been growing and building ever since. Yeah.
Let's talk about the big event, the WNBF Galaxy, right? Like I spoke with AJ and he was even giving props to the WNBF and what they're about to do
Yeah.
right now with the WNBF Galaxy is going to be huge, massive. for
Mhm.
hopefully for natural bodybuilding as a whole, at least in that, definitely in Asia, right? Like we're
Yeah.
talking about big prize money, $100,000. Is that US,
Yep.
by the way? That's being
US dollars.
US
Yeah.
dollars. So let's talk about that. Talk about what do you think? First off, you will be there, right?
Yeah, so I'm actually part of the internal crew for the Galaxy. This is five of our countries that have sort of pulled together ranks to really get this off the ground. And we're basically looking at making sure that we offer what really natural bodybuilding needs. And WNBF, we've sat down and gone through this incredible, plan for this event, and we have so much support to really get something off the ground, which is giving athletes big shows, big cash prizes, but also great accolades, which is what natural bodybuilding needs. We need to be able to move in the direction where we are able to offer what some of our, other side of the sport is able to offer. It's not without its challenges, but it is certainly something that we can do to give natural bodybuilders their time and lights that they deserve as well. It's these big shows and the WNBF rising and pulling together bigger shows for these areas is only a good thing for our sport. And I think we'll see this roll out in other areas as well.
I think about it, it's like the old saying, money talks, right? In a way, like in, the bullshit walks, right? But I think about it and I'm like, okay, when you look at the Olympia, the IFBB, the progression of the prize money for the open class, we're talking
Yeah.
Ronnie Coleman, and it was like 100 grand, 100,000 US dollars was the prize money, around 120,000, I think it was. And then it progressed to now, 2024 was 600,000 US dollars was the
Yeah.
prize money for the winner. So when you look at, okay, if we're talking about natural bodybuilding, an organization being extremely successful, then that progression needs to happen. And in reality, has it really happened? Like from if we look back to the 90s to now, what is the biggest prize money that we've seen for the open class, like the overall, right? If we look at, open class for the overall for bodybuilding, right? For that class, I'd be interested to know how much it's really progressed. Would it maybe a couple $1,000s, if that,
Yeah.
depending on the year, right?
Yeah, and of course sponsors play a huge role in this as well. We need to have sponsors that we can't just rely because of the internal, the cost of running an event itself is astronomical. And I don't think and it depends on where you are, of course, in the world, but I don't think many people realize, just how expensive it is to actually run a show. And you're banking on making sure that you get the ticket sales in to cover your venue costs. You're banking on making sure that you've got all of the, the fees coming in to make sure you're covering your drug testing costs, making sure that you're covering, of course, all of your trophies, your medals, your even just I put an order in for my badges this week,
Mm,
and we're talking 450 pounds in
right.
UK pounds, right? They're badges. They're used once. I never see them again. These are things that we have to program into our budgeting. So there's like a lot of stuff that you have to think about. But when it comes to cash prizes, we need great sponsors, and we need really to be thinking about how do we attract people to really think let's take WNBF. What is WNBF trying to achieve here, and why should we be part of that? And that's a big part of the work that we're doing at the moment for the WNBF Galaxy. Is we've got some great sponsors coming on board that really believe in what we're doing, that see the longevity of natural bodybuilding, but also see the education piece in this, which is health being at the well-being of all we do, is keeping people, especially young people, fit and healthy whilst doing a goal as extreme as bodybuilding. And these are really cool things to be able to talk about when we're going to these shows and educating people or raising more awareness of. And then also the added benefit is we're now able to offer more cash prizes to these winners who showcase the top of our sport, who have done all of that and are a great example then for all of the younger generations of athletes coming in, which we need a lot more of, lots more role models doing that.
So if I'm hearing this too, like, and I think about it, I think, okay, to have somebody go out and make that their primary role, like that's the role of this person as maybe it's part of the WNBF. We're gonna go out, we're gonna find sponsors and sell them on the fact that this is good for your business. Just kind of like an NBA team where they're looking for sponsors. They put the logo of the organization on the jersey, right, or something like that.
Yeah.
These are things that I think about when I think about, okay, how can this progress? Because the IFBB, obviously, I don't know how's that money coming in, 600 grand for the open. I mean, I'm assuming it's coming from sales of people who are viewing it, I guess, going to these
I
events,
have
going to
no
the
idea,
Olympia.
Kenny.
It's an interesting thing to think about and potentially
Yeah,
even talk about because there's a reason why it is where it is and it's success as it is
yeah,
successful. Aside from the fact that I think people like to see the mass monsters and it's very extreme, right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
but I do think that okay, if we're talking about bringing natural bodybuilding to new heights, then sponsorships is a key factor. More bigger prize money, I think, is also very enticing and having more people potentially want to be involved. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not really also just about that because I think a lot of people do the natural bodybuilding thing for other reasons, not just about winning, trying to win the overall, right? It goes beyond that for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really important to note on it because I think for most people it's not about the money. I really don't.
Yeah.
I don't think it is. I think it's for a small percentage of people who are really, really pushing for those top level. Take a young athlete who's been, doing really, really well and has got his overall, got his pro card, and he's going on and on and on. That's the kind of, people we're trying I think would be more attracted to the monetary side of it. But it's a sweetener. It's something that is recognizing the value of natural bodybuilding any monetary way doesn't necessarily align with everybody's reason as to why they compete, because I completely believe that most people compete out of their love and passion for the sport. If I think back to even competing up to 2019, and if I do again, I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it because I want to challenge myself. I want to showcase what can be done with hard work and discipline and focus and all the attributes that, I try and talk to my clients about. And I try and, educate all of the athletes on stage with WNBF UK. But having the monetary added value, it shows that we are working hard to try and find other things to provide the athlete, trying to bring other people in to give you guys or give the athletes, more. That's what we're trying to do. And, even with WNBF UK, we did our first two pro shows last year for men's physique and fit body. And we're now doing three pro shows this year, bodybuilding, fit body, and men's physique. And we are one of the only natural bodybuilding pro shows offering the cash prizes that we were offering in the UK and have done for years. And that's the first time that's been done for a very long time at that level of £1,500, first cash prize, which doesn't sound a lot, but actually for UK and on the natural side of the scene, for first, second, and third to be getting big cash prizes in a pro show is a really great step in the direction for more for athletes. So on a national level, we're trying to do what we can do to provide that more significant value, whether it's in prizes, sponsors, cash prizes, and now collaboratively we're teaming up together as affiliates, pulling on our networks, pulling on our sponsors to offer more opportunity like the Galaxy. So it's building and growing. The more of us that pull together to be able to do this, the more we have options available to us to raise cash prizes and offer great things like what we're going to be doing in November. Yeah.
That's definitely a big step in a direction that I'm sure many could appreciate, especially the athletes competing at these events, right? What do you think about the fact that women's prize money is less than men's?
um, I mean, I've never been asked that question. I think in my heart of hearts, honestly, money's not my driver. So it doesn't feel triggering for me. I don't really kind of think, oh, that's outrageous. If I take myself out of it and just think of it on a broader scale and a generalistic point of view, I wouldn't say I'm kind of it's terrible and it's not great. I think it does need to be fairer. I think there is bodybuilding, of course, is a more male dominant sport. Bodybuilding has been born out of the armies and it has grown to that point of view. But women are going through the exact same process as men. They're doing the exact same thing as men. They are putting their body arguably in a little bit more of a risky situation, considering, we are childbearing animals. So there are other discussion points around that if you were to get deep into it and to challenge it ethically or challenge it morally. I've never really seen anyone, I think, come out argumentatively against it. I may be
Mm.
wrong. You might have heard more than that.
I haven't
But
because you're to be fair, I haven't spoken to too many of the women yet, just Vicky and one other competitor as well who competes in
yeah,
figure. So that and you're my third. So
I think if you were to ask an IFBB figure pro how she felt about it, that would maybe be a different discussion.
mm,
I've never been in a position where I've had that disparity, really. So it's more difficult for me to answer the question. But women in just the mainstream, if we forget bodybuilding for a start, there is all of the growth of equal rights and equal pay in the workplace, and obviously equality for women with men. So, some of those conversations I would imagine will filter across to something like prize money.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay, for those who may not know, what is the highest payout for the women's, like which division? Is it figure? Is it bodybuilding?
Fit Body, and
Fit
that was a
body.
that was a pro show. So I ran the very first female pro show in the UK that last year. We've never had a female pro show across any natural bodybuilding federation in the UK, and we kept them all the same. Every single first, second, and third cash prize is exactly the same across the men's and the females divisions because we think that that's completely fair. So yeah.
Oh. Okay, but what about at Worlds?
Oh, at Worlds, I'm not sure what the breakdown was for
Okay.
for the females. So I wouldn't be able, unless I would have to get that stats up, but I don't actually have that off the top of my
Hmm.
head, so I can't answer that one honestly.
I would be curious, who inspired you to go into the figure specifically? Like there's different categories, right? What is it that drew you towards figure?
Okay, so the first thing that comes to mind in my gym, it was a little rusty gym in Leeds in England where I was training at the time in 2011, 2012, and on the wall was a picture of Nicole Wilkins.
Hmm.
Nicole Wilkins was the old school IFBB figure look, which was so soft. In fact, it's softer than natural figure now, which is crazy. Really soft, lovely flowing lines, beautiful cap shoulders, nice waist, but soft, just soft lines, nothing too lean. And I remember literally training, looking up at that picture and thinking, I want to look like that. But that was back in the day when figure in the IFBB ranks was actually figure. Not where it's gone now is so different. And she was her picture, I used to love it. I've actually got the image in my mind, I can see it. And then that coupled with the very first show I went along to see, and it was figure, and I loved the figure look, and I thought that's me. I can do that. I've got the broad shoulders, I've got the smaller waist. I come from a
Ah,
professional dance background. So I wanted to just start to play with my love for dance and my love for fitness and put it together to try and create that aesthetic. And that's kind of how it all started.
ah. Okay. I saw Nicole Wilkins at the Arnold Classic. I was at that show. Yeah, it was
Awesome.
really cool. Yeah, I saw that was a good year. That was fun to go to the Arnold Classic. And she won. She won the Arnold Classic. Yeah, that's so interesting that you brought that up. It's crazy. She was incredible. I think she's retired now though, right? Like she's not competing
Yes,
anymore.
she's retired and she just does like her personal training and her fitness camps and stuff, but she was awesome. She was a good role model at the time as well. She was smart, charismatic, but grounded. And she knew she didn't want to go to the extremes that they are as well now. So
Right. I was gonna say she doesn't like when I look at Nicole Wilkins, like I even pulled up a photo now just to remind me, like can't that be achieved naturally? Like I don't see that being
100%.
so
100%.
then I start wondering, I'm like, okay, maybe the standard has gone up, obviously, like you had just mentioned, because I think at the
Beautiful.
IP, so now you have to be most likely if you're going to be competing on an even playing field on performance enhancers, even as a woman, right? But at that time, no, I think, right?
No, no, if you take a Nicole Wilkins back then, that figure was achievable naturally. Whether they were still, dabbling or doing what I've no
Sure.
idea about that. But that is a definite you wouldn't look at that now. Some of the natural figure competitors on the WNBF world stage are more muscularly dense and leaner than that look back then.
Crazy.
And it shows how far we've come. But if you take a Nicole Wilkins and you put her right next to Sid Gillen, who's the current 5 times Miss Figure Olympia champion, you look at the two differences in those physiques. They are worlds apart. You're almost looking at what is now, the women's physique division is now figure, and the women's physique division is now,
Ah,
bodybuilding. It's like
crazy.
gone that where everything has got much more developed, much more masculine, much more very sinewy, lean conditioning. And that side of the sport, it's just, I mean, it's never attracted me because I've always found it's taking away from, well, it's not my bag, but
Sure.
it's taking away from what is that natural, beautiful, toned, muscular physique, which can be achieved naturally with just time and hard work, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But that's an interesting conversation because even if you look at the golden era for bodybuilding. And you look at someone like Oscar Moscat or
Yeah, amazing.
Babacar, you're thinking these guys could have probably stood up there against Frank Zane or something and done well, like when you think about it. And
100%.
they're
Yeah.
coming in leaner, like striated glutes. I don't think striated glutes was a thing until Rich Gaspari came onto the scene and then changed the whole dynamic of the entire sport, right? I say sport, but some might argue it's not a sport. But anyways,
No, then it became kind of the stride glutes, like that's all you were looking for a while. And we had to kind of
right.
that back in and be like, guys, there's a whole other body here. We're not just looking for the striated glutes, because
That's
that's something too many people fixate on and forget the rest of the physique when it comes down to that kind of conditioning.
Yeah, that's so true. I've had conversations about that before with some legends in natural bodybuilding. So that's an interesting conversation as well. I guess it's evolved to a point where it could be argued is the evolution, I get subjective to an extent, but is the evolution of where it's gone as far as how lean that judges are expecting the athletes to get, is that always a good thing? I think it's maybe it should be dependent upon like the physique, right? Because I think I was listening to AJ Morris on the Revive Stronger podcast, and he was talking about how, well, if someone's sacrificing a whole bunch of size and fullness and their physique actually looks worse because they're trying to get these striated glutes, maybe we're not going to do that for this athlete. But then when you put them up on stage, if that's a component that's like required, now maybe that person's not even in the lineup anymore, considered to be in the lineup for a potential placing, right? Like to win. Like I'm not a judge, so I don't know, but that's the
Yeah.
kind of like the thoughts I have about where it's gone. But what's your take on this though? Like, do you think that athletes like striving for striated glutes and sacrificing pretty much everything, like that seems to me like it could be more harm than good, like at least for a broad spectrum of reasons, right?
Yeah, it's a terrible idea because what happens is you chase condition to the extreme of trying to dial in one body part. You sacrifice the size, you lose shape, you lose symmetry, you lose balance, and you end up looking very emaciated on stage, but extremely lean. And that's not a healthy look. Impressive to get conditioning, but we're as judges looking for the complete bodybuilder. That is the perfect blend of muscularity, conditioning, and shape and tone to create that beautiful, X-frame look and to have the volume, the volume of the muscle, the fullness of the muscle look healthy and full while seeing that lovely conditioning come through. And that's of course the art of peaking. That's the art of getting this right. It's the art of being lean enough in the first place, but not too lean. And we see it all the time. We see a lot of people sacrifice size for conditioning, and it never ever tends to go all that well. You do have the guys, of course, who will shoot for condition because they can't get the size. So they shoot for their
Mm.
quote unquote strength. Well, I may as well just get shredded then to hang with the guys, which is, I understand that principle too. You do need to play to your strengths and you do need to consider it bodybuilding. And what I tend to see now as well, I know I'm digressing here and going on a bit of a rant, but something I'm passionate about. As a judge and as a coach, a lot of athletes are going in to do a show without thinking about the judging criteria. They're just going
Mm.
in to do the poses and do the show, but they're not stopping to think, okay, what federation am I doing? What rounds are there? How am I playing to each round? And be really intelligent about it. If you're going for the symmetry round, how are you posing in the symmetry round? Same for the obviously muscularity and conditioning. But you need to think about all three rounds to really consider what look am I bringing to the stage and what does that look like in terms of obviously my prep and my peaking strategy to be able to tick all three boxes to the best of my ability on those judging rounds.
Yeah, that's interesting because I was reminding me of when I spoke with Oscar and he was saying how Oscar Moscat and he was saying how okay he could have like okay where does that line of like I'm not going to sacrifice size just to get the conditioning, but at the same time if you're standing next to let's just say like someone like Babacar and he's also big but he also has like striated glutes and
Yeah.
he's shredded, right, but just massive too. Now I haven't seen Babacar in person, right, so that's another thing, but
Like,
let's just say that I'm assuming that's the case, right? Just big and shredded and full and muscular and it's unbelievable, right? And then you have someone like Oscar next to him and then it's like just not quite as lean, but also like incredibly massive, right? And it's like, well, if Babacar wasn't there and you had another guy next to Oscar, let's just say, and he was also shredded, Are the judges just going to reward the guy who has some size? It's like we're talking about the third place guy here, but then again, Oscar came in second, so you can't like I guess the answer is there then, right? He
Yeah.
came in
I mean,
second for a reason, so it's something that I wonder about with as how far people are taking the conditioning that they're sacrificing size. Oscar did speak to that as well, right? He did speak to
oh,
that where,
yeah, I mean, somebody like Oscar can risk pushing condition a bit more because he's got the size.
yeah,
He's got
yeah,
it, right? He can go there. He can push it harder. Babacar, he's like the Vitruvian man,
it's
top to
crazy.
bottom, torso to leg length, clavicle structure over hips, his hip rotation, his ability to flex his calves, flex his glutes. He is a perfectly formed human being. He's hard to beat.
Nuts.
You're not coming in and you have to work super hard against somebody like a Babacar because of his symmetry. And the area that most people fail is not the muscularity and conditioning usually, it's symmetry. You're
Hmm.
either gifted with great genetics or you can pose very well to suit your poses to obviously, create the most perfect balance in your symmetry from front to side to back to side. And that's an art. If you looked at your scorecards, over the years, anybody who's been bodybuilding, and you asked to look at them, I bet you now you'll always score down on your symmetry and you'll always score up on your muscularity and then conditioning somewhere in between. But
Hmm.
symmetry is very hard to get. You're either blessed fully with it or you have to pose like hell in a certain kind of way, hide your weaknesses, lean forward, lean back, slightly tuck. You might tuck glutes, you might put, might shift them back. It depends to create that best balance. And the symmetry, if somebody's got it like a Babacar, is very hard to beat if you've got
Wow.
everything as well. Yeah.
So even if Oscar came in dialed, shredded, like, and still maintained all that size, the illusion of that, anyways, because you actually, then again, I'm sure you can get shredded and maintain, hopefully, as much muscle as possible. That's
Yeah,
always the
yeah.
goal, anyways, right? It's not like you're losing a whole bunch of size. Like, look at Babacar, right? I mean, he's genetically blessed, but at the same time, it's not like he's losing a whole bunch of size, I'm assuming, from start to the finish of
No,
his diet, right?
you need a
So,
good prep strategy to keep the
yeah.
fullness all the way through. Yeah.
Right, right. So if Oscar, let's say he came in just as lean, were you
I think,
judging, by the way? Do you think he would have
yeah,
won?
yeah, I was I wasn't actually judging the heavyweight. I was sat watching. I wanted to watch that and I had a client in Pro Fit Body, so I had to be off to do that. But Oscars, again, symmetry, fantastic. I mean, it was such a battle. It was so good to watch. It was one of those moments that you might not get a lot of, to these top level guys, absolute beasts. The only other person I could imagine sitting there as well would be like a Brian DaCosta, like sat
Ooh,
next there or
wow.
something.
That's crazy.
Like
Yeah.
three dense, thick guys, something like that. That could have been cool. But anyway, just regardless of that, just watching the two of them battle it out, Oscar's got great symmetry as well. I think if he was just that touch harder, that could have gone on and on and on and on and on. Because at that point, and Bob really drills this to us as well from a training point of view in the judging, you're looking at everything. You're going from the calf, you're looking at the split in the calf, you're micro checking, cross looking at everything from their calves right up through, into the hamstrings, their lateral quads, their inner quads. You're looking at everything, shifting, comparing them, because at that level, it's not, oh, he's good. And you could just tell. You have to do the judging body part by body part by body part. And it's exhausting in a way because you're really being put through the test of you chop the head off, doesn't matter who's on top anymore. It's from here down. What's going on underneath? What are we looking at to make sure that we make sure the right guy wins here? Because at that level, you can't miss. You can't miss it. That's where the judging and the training, the good judging comes in. And that's something that WNBF takes so much pride in. And
Hmm.
that's what we're known for. It's quality tissue on stage. It has to be judged like quality tissue. But something like that is an incredible battle to watch. It really is. I've got like little hairs on end because the energy you feel seeing these are the top natural elites.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm passionate also about WNBF. That's why I wanted to be a WNBF pro because they're the best. They're
Yeah.
just there doing their thing, thrashing it out with one another. And it's I mean, I'm very privileged to be a judge to be able to have had that experience to go through that as well. But it inspires the younger generation. That's what we want young guys and girls to look up to and go like, they could stand on IFBB stage, no problem. They'd be fine.
Yeah, if there was an appropriate class for that, that would be awesome to see.
Wouldn't
Like,
it?
it would be really cool. But this is where I was talking about earlier about the prize money because it would be really cool to see that these guys could make a real living
Mm.
actually competing
Doing
and
it.
winning. Yeah, like you're like, okay, top three, right? You're taking home money that you can support your family. And that's kind of the direction I'm looking at it from because the amount of effort, like when I hear Oscar's training, I'm thinking this guy's putting in 3 hour sessions and he's got a full-time job, he's got a family of four. It's like, and he's doing that. And I think, man, that's like,
That's like Superman.
that's like Superman stuff right there. So, and I'm sure Babacar is doing the same. And these guys that are on that level now, obviously, it can be argued is that much training necessary when you get into the weeds of it. Yeah, of course, you can always play that game, right? But at the end of the day, they're doing that, and that's what's led them to where they
Mm.
are, right? On that world stage and coming in first, second, third, whoever it is, right? The point is that, yeah, that would be like when you look at it from that perspective. Now, mind you, like I know that when you look at the IFBB and you look at someone like Chris Bumstead, this guy's making a living doing it, right? Like he's
Yeah.
in bodybuilding full time. Same thing with the open class, of course, when we're looking at least the top three, I would think that they're making a living doing this, right? So now, when you look at the golden era, I think that was a different time, but we always talk about how bodybuilding's evolved. We've evolved since the golden era, right? But when it comes to the natural side of things, and obviously from a prize money point of view, maybe not that much. But mind you, like you said, the galaxy's a step in the right direction. And yeah, it's not all about the money, but when you look at it from the point of view that I'm looking at it from, that's a little bit of a different point of view than let's just say someone who's only in bodybuilding for the money. No, you could be in bodybuilding because you love it and because it can reward you and allow you to do this full time. That would be really
Yeah.
cool, right?
Yeah, for sure. And something like the Galaxy is awesome as well because the access point's good. With the Galaxy, the qualification rule is you have to have done one WNBF show, speak to your whoever it is, say you're in the UK, you just say, Steph, can I go do Galaxy? I'll either say, have you done a show? You'll check you've done a show, and they can go and do that show. It's an easy access point into now having global big shows at your fingertips. That's another point of this as well, is that we want more of these events with prestige and with opportunity. These are pro card awarding events. They are, international titled events. They are also tickets to world, like paid for full flight tickets to worlds
Oh,
events, these events. So giving easier access points for athletes to do that is going to be a really great thing for the sport. So it's allowing more and more people to have access into the WNBF. And if they want to go travel, then having done a show allows them to do that without, it having to be a top five or a top three. It's doing a show and then they can go into that event. Yeah.
oh, that's really cool. So whoever's winning and has qualified for Worlds, their flight taken care of if they're living in, let's just say, in Asia.
Yeah, so like if, for example, they do really well at Galaxy, they can take the tickets, the world tickets, and they can take the cash prize. So they've got options there to be able to have a fully funded trip over to the world finals from the
Oh,
Galaxy, just doing the Galaxy. Yeah.
wow. Out of curiosity, because I actually don't know this, maybe you know this. What was the prize money at Worlds? Like, what did Babacar take home?
I actually am not aware of the breakdown of the prize money. That's not something I'm privy to. I've got obviously the people you can speak to. You've got the top of the tree that you can speak to about the
Yeah.
prize money. I don't have the actual figures. I can't be open about that one on this one.
Sure, that's interesting. Yeah, because like that's why I loved Brian Whitacre has a website, his own personal website. Maybe you know about this, but
I've
he's
seen
got the
it with all
breakdown. It's amazing. He's got I don't
yeah.
know, he's got the breakdown of second place prize money, third place prize money, dating back from when he competed to when he retired. I don't know if we can say officially retired, but when he stopped, right? When his championship reign ended, let's just put it that way. And that is really cool to see, and you could kind of see
Yeah.
the evolution. But it was interesting because you'd see like some years where you'd have it more and then a year would be a little bit less and then more again and it's not like every year it's more and more and more like in the IFBB, right?
That's it. Like, I mean, for every one in the world, you want to be able to put it up and up and up. Like, I've raised mine a couple £100 on top of each of the first, second, thirds this year because of what's come in last year. We can reinvest and go again. That's the thing, though, is you've got to have a machine that is working so that you can what's come from the season prior put back in and try and build and keep going that way. On the open side of the sport, I can't speak for where all of the finance is coming from, whether it's nefarious reasons, whether it's
Sure.
sponsorship and wonderful deals. You've no idea, do you know what I mean?
No
But in
idea.
our side of the sport, we are paying a lot of our the money that comes in is going to the stringent drug testing that we're doing, is going to all of the, upgrades that we're putting into the events, and it's making sure then that the events are going to run incredibly smoothly. Or, for example, for me, the Supernaturals last year was massive. We had 258 athletes. It was a monumental day. It was by far the biggest challenge show I've ever done. And the community wanted 2-day show. We've scaled up to a 2-day event. It's the Supernaturals Weekender in September this year. It's going to be a mega event. It's a mini expo. We've thrown absolutely everything at this event, but that's a double weekend now. That's a double venue cost. That's a bigger investment. It's all of this stuff because we have to upgrade year on year based on what the community wants. And I'm super excited about it because it means that, the community, they love what we're doing. They're buying into what we're doing and they're helping support us grow in the right way so that everything that we do can benefit them. So yeah, it's just about reinvestment and doing it in the
Mhm.
appropriate way at the right time. So you're not, because if you go too quickly, too far, if you put too much out and you fall, then that's not going to help anyone either. You've got to, it's a business model. You've got
Right.
to slowly do what's right in the best interest of the federation also, so that you can provide these opportunities and ongoing and raise cash prizes. Otherwise, you risk putting the one thing that, we're all trying to do this for, it's at a disadvantage.
That makes sense. Yeah. The last thing you want to do is have like this big prize money one year, and then the next year it's like, where did it go?
Like,
Like
we
that
don't
would
have
be
the business
awful.
now.
Yeah, that's awful,
Yeah,
right? That would be terrible. But yeah, that's understandable. It's a process, right? Work in progress. Yeah, yeah.
it is.